So we're talking about getting closer to the Lord. And what we're trying to do in the process is we're trying to help everybody understand how that this is not like an optional thing. It's something like, that would be nice. I would like to know the Lord a little more. But it's like, you have a call from God on your life. Your purpose, hopefully, your purpose is not the one of your own making. You're really aware that from the time of your birth, there was a divine purpose imparted into your spirit. Even before then, of course, in the womb, that there's a divine purpose that called you into being. It wasn't haphazard. It wasn't simply a matter of biology. There's something about meaning and identity in the call of God in our life. If we think that getting closer to God is like an extra little tweak in our spiritual life, it's kind of like a choice between should I get ultra premium supreme gas or regular gas? It might give a little oomph in my car or whatever, it's a little extra option. Or we even think that this is helpful for my spiritual life, and we're not understanding this is about life. There is not a life in two parts, spiritual and just everyday. There's just one life. And there's a high and holy calling in each and every one of our lives. Now, we could think that this is just spiritual talk, words, or we could engage and understand it. Look, if we don't know God really, really well, we could miss it in significant ways. Because knowing God intimately, closely, and pursuing that infinite path makes all the difference for every decision we would ever make in our life. It makes a difference in the relative experience of joy. Because, for instance, if we are wrapped up too much in this life, do we understand that our joy will always be conditional? Whether things are going the way we'd like them to go or not. But if they are so embedded in God Himself that your joy and my joy is relative to the barometer of God's joy, well then that's entirely different. Right? Right? Isn't that right? Am I speaking what's right?
Yeah.
That's right. Really, I'm serious. So it's like, yeah, that's a good point. No, it's not. It really makes a difference. It's the rudder on the ship. You can have a ship and you can just go around in circles and you can be enjoying the entertainment there, but you're not going anywhere. You need a rudder. And in this case, we need to really understand being close to God isn't just like an extra sail on a ship that doesn't need sails. It is something that is so, so important. For the absence of understanding and knowing God, what Jeremiah called Israel back to. You just got to know and understand the Lord. If you don't, you're going to think you're a big deal if you have a lot of money. You're going to think you're a big deal if you have lots of insights. You're going to think that you're a big deal if you have an army behind you. But it says, let not the man boast in his power or in his wisdom or in his wealth. But let him boast that he knows and understands me, the Lord says. I just find that fascinating that we could actually know and understand the Lord. I know and understand the Lord. More now than I did a year ago. But I wanted to linger in that pause so you understand that there is such a thing as knowing and understanding. I know God in ways I did not know Him a year ago. And in ways I didn't know, I know Him better now than I knew Him a week ago. And it really makes a difference in how I live in my house, what I think about my life, because He's God. And I have a divine call in my life. So the first thing to understand is that to know and understand the Lord makes a huge difference in so many things in our life. I want to, well, you know, a lot of times you hear people when there's a tragedy, right? That they say, why did God allow this? You know, why did God allow this person to get cancer? Why did God allow this terrible traffic accident with this collision with this train, oncoming train? How come that happened? The person was so young, there was so much in the future. I just don't understand what all this is about. And the question that really should be said, do you really understand God? Do you understand God so well that you could ask the question? First, answer this question. Why is there any good in your life? What is life? Answer these questions first. What is life? Where did it come from? Where's it going to? You got to stop and ask the big question about who God is first before you try to figure out what you think he did wrong. But if you're not even thinking about him until there's a tragedy, and then you try to figure it all out, of course you're going to be speaking stupid because you really don't know. But you're acting like you do know. You act like you think, well, God has such control of everything that he's responsible for everything. And really, I don't really have much responsibility myself because God is just doing things. Isn't he all powerful? Yes. Doesn't he control everything? Not the way you think. Because a part of how God is, this is knowing and understanding, is that he purposely gave you a measure of control. See, but we don't understand God as someone who would share responsibility spiritually and in the natural with us. And we don't see that because we don't know him very well. But God wants us to know him very well. He wants you to have a relationship with him where he says, come on, talk to me. What do you think I should do? Now you think, well, that's kind of close to blasphemous, isn't it? Not if you know him. If you don't know him, yes, probably is. But if you know him, you will know how to have this conversation. And brothers and sisters, here's my point today. You and I have a mantle. You who've been called to be servant members, you have a mantle to build church. This is not something that you and I can do. It must be supernatural. It begins within our heart of hearts, and then it flows into our minds and our spirits, and it activates our whole understanding of life. Not our church life, our life. And our life is church life. That's how God sees it anyway. And the thing is that we need to be so close to God to be able to know when to speak, when not to speak, what to talk about with him, what not to talk about with him, what to demand and command, and what to submit and relinquish. And you know, it's not going to just happen because God's all-powerful. I'm telling you, he's all-powerful, and he set it up this way. So that isn't the argument. Yes, every time is going to kind of collapse into eternity. There is going to be a judgment, and it's final, and we will not be consulted directly for what's going to go on. But there's something about our life that's imbued with supernatural and eternal designs, and we can be ignorant of it and walk out our life like they don't exist, but then we will miss so much. So what I want to do is I want us to open up a part of our hearts that might have been closed, to understand that pursuing intimacy with God helps us come into a relationship with Him where we get to have meaningful conversations with Him that make a difference in the spiritual and natural reality both within us and outside of us. So I would like to do this by way of a biblical account. And this is a famous encounter that Abraham has with God. He has just received the 3 visitors, which are a theophany, a manifestation of God Himself, when they delivered the word that Sarah would conceive. And as he's walking them out of the camp, the Lord speaks to Abraham. And I would say, brothers and sisters, if you can hear what the Lord speaks to us, we really have to hear this specific encounter that Abraham had with God and see there's an application for us. So the Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do?" This is already intimacy. He could hide it, but he's either asking those angelic ministers or this very manifestation of himself in these 3 persons, or he's just talking to himself. And Abraham is listening. Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? Since Abraham will surely become a great and mighty nation, and in him all the nations of the earth will be blessed. For I have chosen him, so that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring upon Abraham what he has spoken about him. So right away he's saying, I've got these divine designs for Abraham, great and mighty nation. Now, brothers and sisters, we may have forgotten this, but we should remember it every day, that the Lord has called us out of the world that we might be seated with Christ in Him at the Father's right hand, and so that we might be a kingdom and priest to God. That is, or as the King James says it, and it carries a good meaning, a similar meaning, that we might be kings and priests before God. When it says that we're a kingdom, it means He's given us the kingdom. And that's why the King James says, you're a king. But there's other places that in Revelation 5:17, the Lord says that if you overcome, you will sit with me on my throne. You, me. Do you see that? Are we seeing this? That our future is to be on the throne with God. Now, if we don't see this, we don't care what the heck happens day to day. We don't care that we know God well or not. We've got other things to do. We're busy people. But if this life, suppose this, if this life was preparation, important preparation, day by day, to reign with the Lord Himself, and that the Lord wants to communicate Himself and transform us so that we are prepared, so that with Him we could rule as sons, first heirs with the heir Jesus, then you look at life different. And the Lord would say to us, am I going to hide this? I don't want to hide this from you. Do you want to see it? Because if you see it, you're not just going to get prepared on, you're going to receive the preparation and engage it so that you can rule with Christ like Christ. I know I need a lot of preparation then. I know I need to really know God better because I don't really know what that means. But if I know Him, I'll keep knowing it better. If I know Him, I'll know what I need to know. Because it's a co-rulership. I'm not ruling on my own. I'm ruling in and with him. Okay. So the Lord goes on to say, and the Lord said, so here's the thing I'm not going to hide from Abraham. The outcry of Sodom and Gomorrah is indeed great, and their sin is exceedingly grave. I will go down now and see if they have done entirely according to its outcry, which has come to me, and if not, I will know. Then the men turned away from there and went towards Sodom while Abraham was still standing before the Lord. In other words, God is proceeding to Sodom and Gomorrah to execute judgment for this rampant homosexuality, adultery, lies, deceits, corruption of every kind, idolatries, just on and on it goes. So they are going to be judged. So as they walk out in the distance, knowing that that's what they're about, Abraham comes near to the Lord. He says, comes near. That is with his heart, brothers and sisters. There's no place. Where's he talking about? He's drawn near to the Lord. And he said, will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you indeed sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to slay the righteous with the wicked, so that the righteous and the wicked are treated alike. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly? First, this is a conversation that God likes to have with Abraham. Verse 26. I guess I should give you the reference. Excuse me. That's not the reference. That's not even the name of a book of any Bible that I'm even familiar with. All right. 18. Genesis 18. Okay. So, verse 26. So the Lord said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, I will spare the whole place on their account. And Abraham replied, now behold, I ventured to speak to the Lord, although I am but dust and ashes. It's a good perspective, but he's still going to say something. That sounds like a disagreement with God. Suppose the 50 righteous are lacking 5. Would you destroy the whole city because of 5? And he said, I will not destroy it if I find 45. He spoke to me yet again and said, suppose 40 are found there. And he said, I will not do it on account of 40. Then he said, well, may the Lord not be angry, and I shall speak. But he doesn't seem to wait for a response. He goes on. Suppose 30 are found there. And he said, I will not do it if I find 30 there. And he said, now, behold, I have ventured to speak to the Lord. Suppose 20 are found there. By the way, this word in the Hebrew for Lord is master. So, talking to the master here. And he said, I will not destroy it on account of the 20. Then he said, oh, may the Lord not be angry, and I shall speak only this once. Suppose 10 are found there. And he said, I will not destroy it on account of the 10. And as soon as he had finished speaking to Abraham, the Lord departed, and Abraham returned to his place. So here's what didn't happen. Abraham's asking him, hey, there's 50 righteous people. Will you destroy it for that? He didn't say, Abraham, who are you? Do you know what I know? What in the heck? Right? And do you have to even talk to me about this? How dare you? You see this thumb, Abraham? It's coming on you right now, and it's going to crush you, and no one will even know you ever existed. I mean, that's what people sometimes think of God. It's like, you hear the story, so you don't think that, but I'm just saying, it's God he's talking to. And isn't our conception of God so much so, I wouldn't speak that way to God. That's not very reverent. Here's the reverent response, but what didn't happen? I am going to give judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah for all their wickedness. I'm going to wipe out the whole city. We would think, Lord, so be it. Why wasn't that an appropriate response? Because Abraham had a vision of God which was right. That God is indeed just and righteous and compassionate And because Abraham had given up everything for God. He gave up his birthright. He left his home. He left his inheritance. He left the gods of that place. He left everything that he could have been because it was all established, all ready for him just to take it over. And he left it all because of one thing. He heard a voice. He heard a voice. And he wanted to go where that voice was telling him to go. He was so hungry for God that a voice could lead him to leave his families and leave his inheritance and move away from that place and go to a foreign land. And he did not know where he was going. But the voice, he knew the voice. The voice was strong enough. And in that voice, he heard love. He heard power. He heard the meaning that echoed in his own soul. And he was willing to leave it all for that voice. Abraham wasn't doing church. That's not a church meeting that he had with God. This was life for him. God was life for him. God was everything to him, not some things. And who he knew God to be was the most important of everything about life, which he knew and was everything. So it was only fitting that he had this dialogue with God because he knew God, and he knew that God would not respond the way that we kind of characterize him. He also knew this, and this culture doesn't know this either. It makes a difference. It makes a difference if you're intimate with God. You would not have that conversation if you weren't intimate with God. You would just say, God, you know. Or I don't know, it's a mystery. Seems cruel, but I don't know anything. As if I'm not knowing anything is reverence, as opposed to laziness. As opposed to its investment in other things that seem more important. I'm busy right now. I don't know. It's not like I know so much. I don't know. I know you so well. In this case, and it comes to at times, brothers and sisters, where you know him so well that you venture to talk with God, not out of your own personal anger or agenda, but you talk with God because you do know him. And you see how Abraham is even talking to God. He's saying, God, you're just. He's actually defending the Lord's name. And the Lord is saying, I want this scenario to be recorded for generations so people can know who I am. And that who I am leaves room for people to engage me. And in the engagement, everyone will know me better. Because of this dialogue with Abraham, we could know then whatever will be will not necessarily be. And in this case, it actually saved his nephew's family, Lot. Those 10. Now, whether they should have been saved or not, I don't know. They didn't seem like they were really high on the ranking of righteousness and zeal. But Peter is able to call them the righteous Lot. And the reason is, which I can't go into now, it's because God did this because of Abraham's faith. Because Abraham was his friend. God did Abraham a favor. I mean, really, God isn't really worried what people think about him. You know, he can handle it. But sometimes we think he might not, and it troubles us. And so for our sake, sometimes God will say, okay, I'll take care of this. Just because you would like me to do that. Just because you're so into me. You're so identified with me that we are not just related, but we're friends. And Abraham was the first one who was called a friend of God. I want to be a friend of God. I want to be able to know him intimately. The fact that I could possibly understand and know the Lord, that's open to me. I don't know about you, but that just aches in me. I want them to fill that out. What does that mean? Who are you? Lord, tell me more who you are. Because, you know, I do feel a call in my life And I'm not unique. Everyone here has a call on their life, whether they realize it or not. I realize it because of my relationship with God. And I'm also realizing this. I don't know what to do lots of times with that call. But I don't have to if I know him, if I can approach him. If I can approach him like, I know who you are, so now in this case, it seems like commanding is appropriate. In this case, because I know you, it seems like just submitting is appropriate. Just waiting is appropriate. But I'm going to tell you right now, there is no template. It's not always appropriate to have such a dialogue with God. There are no rules here. This is wonderful, I think. I was going to use this board, I'm not going to use it, I guess. I think it's wonderful and fascinating. You can't just relate by rules with God because he's personal. And he's saying, can I be personal with you? Put down the rule book then, okay? Let me reveal something about me that you could never know on your own. That you could never know if you got a really good book about all the things that God would say, that I would still tell you so much more. Just by you and me. Just you and me talking with each other. So Abraham teaches us about this God who is like, seems like he changes his mind. And a lot of people debate, did he change his mind or not? I think he did, and I think he didn't. Both. I think something was different. I think something really happened. Brothers and sisters, we have to enter into this knowing God in such a way that we never despair. We are never discouraged. We never need be frustrated or confused because we are not looking for a particular outcome, but we are seeking to know and understand God. And so we pursue him as the end and as the beginning, and he reveals himself to us. And we find that his heart becomes our heart. We need to move away from constructs that are so forced because we're looking for a particular kind of product. I was listening to one prophet, and I loved what he said, because he said, the interviewer said, and he was like prophesying from literally to like when he was just even an infant, because he died, and then his mother had this prophetic sense that he was going to come back to get back to life, and it's just dramatic. All this stuff's dramatic, but anyway, I don't want to digress too much. But his powerful dreams, and the dreams aren't symbolic. He says most of them, the vast majority have no symbols. They're just direct, clear, and God just speaks to me, and they're 100% accurate. And so the interviewer said, do you ever seek God for a word for people? He says, no, I don't do that. He says, if people want to enter into the prophetic, they have to do this. And this is what I do. I seek to know God's heart as the end in itself. That I would have the heart of God. And then when I have the heart of God, then I'm able to speak from his heart to people. But I don't seek for words. And I'm not saying that it's wrong for people to come before the Lord to ask for words. But there's something beautiful about that image that I think is so healthy, that God isn't to make us successful in our ambitions. God just wants us to know how loving he is so that we would pursue him as the end. And he changes us into love. And now obedience and divine initiative is seamless with knowing the loving God. It's not part two. It's all a part of part one, which is everything. And the Lord is calling us today because, see, there is a need for a people who are able to love and love other people. But they first have to love the Lord and know the Lord. And we're called, all of us, to have such an identification with the Lord that, like Jesus, we have a zeal for his house. And so we don't know how to do that, but that's okay. The Lord says, draw closer to me. I will show you so many things as you seek me for who I am. that you will enjoy the journey. You will not just wait till you come to the end. You will enjoy it from the beginning because you'll know I'm with you. Because if my joy can be made full in you and who I am, I want to give you the fullness of my joy. Amen.